The OnePlus Nord series is one of the company's most successful phone ranges to date, seeking to offer high-end performance in an affordable package. We've had the second flagship Nord phone, and so now it's time for the core edition, the OnePlus Nord CE2. Like when OnePlus announced the original Nord CE, the CE2 is designed to offer a distilled experience of the Nord 2. So does it succeed, or should you go for the proper Nord 2 instead? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and in this video I'll explain all. And while you're here, if you do like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more of our videos. Now, despite some similarities between these two phones, there are enough visual distinctions to keep you from being confused about which is which. So OnePlus has been keen to point out that the CE2 is its thinnest phone since the OnePlus 6T, but don't let that fool you into thinking it's small. It's actually slightly taller than the Nord 2, primarily because it has a chunkier bezel or chin at the bottom of the display. Still, at 7.8mm thick, it's slightly slimmer than the 8.3mm Nord 2. You can feel it, but it's not all that different in the hand. It's also a little lighter, but again, not enough to make a massive difference to the experience. It's when you look around the edges at the ports and the buttons that you see the hardware that makes the most difference to the experience of using both phones. Nord CE2 adds some faithful fixtures that most other phones have done away with, and then done away with one of the staple features of the OnePlus phone range. In case you're unsure what those are, I'm talking about the 3.5mm audio socket and the micro SD card slot, and the alert slider. Nord CE2 has both a 3.5mm port and a micro SD card slot. Plus, that SD card slot is in a tray that also has space for 2 SIMs, so you don't have to choose between expanding storage and having a dual SIM setup. Nord 2 has dual SIM, but no memory expansion and no 3.5mm port. It does, however, have the alert slider switch, which is a really convenient way to switch between ring, silent and vibrate, something that a lot of OnePlus phones have had for years. So onto the back, and you get probably the most easily visible difference, especially when you look at the camera housing. While the Nord 2 has this neat little aluminium plate with chamfered edges, the CE2 has this transparent area that curves up from the back of the phone. It's moulded from the same piece of plastic as the rest of the rear panel, where the Nord 2 is made of glass. That means they do feel quite different, and the plastic is far more prone to collecting fingerprint smudges. Now onto display, and we won't spend too much time on this because, for all intents and purposes, they're the same. Both have a 6.43-inch Full HD AMOLED panel capable of reaching up to 90Hz refresh rates and support HDR10+. They're both also coated in Gorilla Glass 5. Watching them side by side, and it's no surprise that it's really difficult to see any significant difference in the way they show color, light, sharpness and shadows. Regardless of streaming platform or service, they are very, very similar. The one slight difference, and it is very slight, is that with both in the same default vivid settings, the Nord CE2 screen seems slightly cooler and cleaner, with the Nord 2 featuring an ever so slightly warmer tone. I wish I could say a bit more about these two in this regard, but that's really all there is to it. They are so incredibly similar. Both are bright, adequately sharp, and thanks to HDR10+ support, they're great for watching all your favourite shows and videos on. The one part that does make a difference when watching movies or videos is sound. The CE2 plays its audio through a loudspeaker on the bottom edge, where the Nord 2 plays it through a speaker near the top as well, so you get more of a stereo effect. But in truth, neither has particularly good sound quality from those speakers. They can get pretty loud, but once you turn them up, they do tend to distort quite a lot. Moving on, and when looking at performance and battery life, there are very clear similarities between the Nord 2 and the CE2. They do have different processors though. The Nord 2 has the MediaTek Dimensity 1200 chipset, where the Nord CE2 has a Dimensity 900. That's basically a step down in terms of processing power. You can see it, but only if you have the two phones side by side, so when you're loading games, the Nord 2 seems to load ever so slightly quicker than the CE. We're talking fractions of a second here, but it's a pretty consistent result regardless of which game we load. And once you're in the game, however, it's hard to tell the two apart because they both feel fast and responsive, which is great for phones in this price bracket. Neither feels slow or laggy. If there's any difference in fluidity and response times for touch gestures, it's really not easy to see. And when you load up benchmarking tools like Geekbench, the difference in scores is relatively small as well. Battery life is virtually identical too. Again, no surprise given that they have the same capacity. They have virtually the same software and very similar hardware. and they can both comfortably get through a full day even on your busiest days. On our typical days with moderate use, which is about 2 or 3 hours of screen time, they both tend to finish the day somewhere around 40% left over after unplugging it first thing in the morning. Charging speed is the same too, with both supporting 65-watt fast charging. So you can get a full charge in about 35 or 36 minutes. It's no longer called Warp Charge though, instead it uses Oppo's SuperVOOC branding, but the technology is the same. So cameras, and here's where there's a bit more of a difference. Where the Nord 2 has a 50 megapixel main camera, the CE2 has 64. They both of course do pixel binning to get that resolution down to 12 and 16 respectively. Ultra-wide cameras are both 8 megapixels, and the third cameras are practically useless on both. The Nord 2 has a monochrome and the CE2 has a macro, and they're both 2 megapixels. Results can be different though, likely due to the higher quality sensor in the Nord 2. It's capable of producing colour-rich shots with good detail and depth, especially in daylight and outdoors. In comparison, the Nord CE2 can often feel a little more contrast heavy and lacking a little in colour, and often with a bit more of that overly artificial sharpened look. Small details can get a bit rough. The selfie cameras are similar too, with the Nord CE2 often seeming a little paler with my own skin tone, and seeming a bit softer too. And if you leave the default filters and beautification on, which are switched on by default, it can look pretty bad. So in the end, there's really not a massive amount separating these two phones. And that includes the price. In the UK, they're about £50 apart, which isn't huge. It boils down to a couple of things though. If you want the better main camera and the more premium build and ever so slightly faster performance, get the Nord 2. If you want to save money, or you really want storage expansion and a physical audio port, you'll get that with the Nord CE2 without really losing out on anything else. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on social media, particularly on Twitter. If you want to get hold of me, you can do there. If you like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, it helps us a great deal. Tap subscribe and that notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more of our videos. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.